Hi, and welcome to Overflow Chat. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing how you can connect to your African culture when you're in the diaspora. So today I'm joined by two wonderful guests. They are my cousins, although I didn't know they were cousins of mine until about a year ago, but that's
Yep.
another story. So so I'll just let you guys introduce yourselves. Your like, who are you? What are your names? Where do you come from? Where have you grown up? Be as brief or as long as you want to be.
I'll let you go first.
Can we go first? Hi, my name is Waku, and I am Moka's older sister.
Hey.
And what was the other part? Who I am, where I'm from. So I am originally from Zambia. I was born there and partially grew up there until I was 11, and we moved to the UK, to Wales, and I've been staying there majority of my life. And I work as a scientist, and I'm also a musician. And together with my sister, we help youth and young people connect with their true identity.
Yeah. So, as you know, we're sisters. So I was also born in Zambia and then moved here when I was 7. I grew up for the majority of the time in Cardiff and then moved to Canterbury for university, came back to Cardiff shortly after I finished. And I love working with young people and just helping them find their identity, because especially as youth, that's the time when we are processing life and trying to figure out what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of it, not knowing who you are, and like it kind of causes some unnecessary confusion. So what I love to do is just create a sense of belonging and help people find their true identity, really. Yeah.
Yeah. I think identity is such a huge thing, and we're actually going to touch on this, especially with regards to this topic of, you grow up in one part of the world, and then another part of the world, and it's kind of like, a bit confused, and like, where do I belong? Who am I? I think that's an important topic to grapple with. So the first question that I want us to kind of consider is, what challenges did you face kind of growing up with that kind of upbringing, where you spend your life in one part of the world, Zambia, and then you guys were in Wales, I was in Scotland, so similar situation, two completely different cultures. So what kind of challenges did you face? I think firstly, let's think about just kind of growing up when maybe you're a bit younger, and then how has that unfolded as you've grown older. So Moka, why don't you just start us off?
Yeah. Because I was quite young when we first moved to the UK, I thought it was a long holiday. Because we came over and I was like, yeah, we're going on the plane. I saw mum go on the plane and like all the grown-ups. So I was thinking, this is my chance. I get to go on holiday. We're going somewhere different, So we arrived and it only clicked that we moved when we started school. And then I thought, well, I like it here, so it doesn't really matter. So I think one thing I noticed was like just different terms for things. So I would call something, for example, in class, we'd always clean up after we had playtime or whatever. And so I would be like, hey, have you seen the broom? And people are like, the broom? Oh, you mean the sweeping brush? So things like that. That's something I struggled with, was just like, you call something a different name. And then like, I think because English was my first language anyway, so that's something I didn't struggle with. But in primary school, we were learning Welsh as well as English. So it was just like something, apparently I like picking up languages. So I didn't even notice I was learning Welsh as a different language, but it was easy to pick up. And making friends was quite an easy thing to do, but I did realize there was one major issue, that was my name. So, because my name is spelled Moka, and so everyone was calling me Muka. And the major thing is that the teacher, before I even came to the class, was like, there's a new kid coming into school. Okay, this is what I think happened anyway, because everyone happened to know my name. So I think she introduced me. She was like, this is Muka. So everyone called me Muka. And I was just like, I'm sorry, my name is Moka. I'm trying to correct it. But like, yeah. So like at this moment in time, still to this day, some people call me Muka, some people call me Moka, and a small variety call me Muka Moka. So,
Right.
yeah.
I did not know that.
I started in sixth form, but yeah. Yeah, that's my story.
And mine was a bit similar with it, with regard to like the excitement of actually moving in the first instance.
Yeah.
But to some extent, actually, I do remember wanting to go back to Zambia initially, because I think growing up with my cousins and my friends, we had all these dreams, these shared dreams together. Like when we grow up, we're going to have an apartment together, blah, blah, blah. So I was kind of mourning those dreams and aspirations I had growing up in Zambia, but I was excited about the next chapter, but I did not know what to expect. So it was a huge adventure, but it was a culture shock for me. So it was the opposite to actually what Moko was experiencing.
Yeah.
Because she was younger, she was about 7 and I was 11. I went straight into high school. High school was a jungle, like honestly. It tore me apart for the first 3 years. I really struggled to make friends. And that's one of the reasons being that I found that like the terminologies that they used was different. So I kind of was getting used to, I guess, the local language and learning Welsh. I was like, what in the world? I did not know it was a language until I saw it like on my timetable. I was like, what in the world? What is this? So, but I was quite academic and studious, so that was fine. I didn't struggle with school with regard to that, but it was the making friends, making connections, connecting with people was a huge struggle for me. And one of the main things that a lot of the people were gossipers. They liked gossiping and were quite like backstabby, and that's not my personality. So I'm quite chilled and laid back. And for instance, I'll give you an example. If I say that you're my friend, I mean you're my friend for life. Like I truly mean it. I guess somebody described me in high school as very loyal. So I didn't understand the concept of breaking friends.
Yeah.
So I would see people and I think they're very close, a close group of friends. The next thing you know, they're fighting, they're backstabbing each other, talking against each other and saying that they've broken friends. So that was a new term for me. I was like, how do you break friends? A friend is, if a true friend will last a lifetime. So I was kind of getting used to that aspect of high school and looking for who I was really. How do I fit in here? Because I stood out. There were not many people of color at my school. I was trying to find my place and I struggled for a while, but eventually I did. There is good news. I found a great group of people, but I guess the main thing I struggled with was finding out where I fit in the puzzle, because when we first moved, I felt like I belonged in Zambia. So that was one thing, like I wanted to go back. I longed to go back. But when I went to Zambia, things were different.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that I was different.
Yeah.
So then I had like this fusion of cultures and I was now wrestling with, okay, where do I belong? Because I'm not 100% British, not 100%, don't feel 100% Zambian, although I identify mostly as Zambian. So the identity crisis began for me in high school. And that's something that I worked with and wrestled with throughout my youth. And I guess maybe that's what kind of pushes me to have compassion for the youth and try to help people have tools to identify where they fit in the world and where they belong.
I think just when you're saying, I can probably more relate to your experience, Waka, because I left Zambia halfway through, I was 14, halfway through grade 10. I literally got picked up in the middle of class. I think it was chemistry. Like, you're going to Zambia. My friends were like, I'm just terrible at goodbyes. So I was like, bye guys. And then, then 1 week later, I'm in school in Scotland, in Paisley. So, that was just nuts. And then at the beginning, I was like, just want to go back home. I constantly compared being in Scotland to being in Zambia. Well, back in Zambia, we did this. I would very much identified myself as I'm Zambian. It's something I took pride in. It's something I mentioned every 2 seconds. Like, okay, yeah, we know you're Zambian. And then it's like, hey, did you guys? I'm Zambian. I'm Zambian. And then as time went on, what you mentioned there about the identity crisis, I'm feeling that more probably in the last few years than when I was a bit younger. I remember a recent trip to Zambia. So this is funny. Like my brother, I was trying to speak in local language, like in Bemba, and my brother was like, "It's not working out for you. Just sit down." Like, at the markets, when you need to negotiate stuff, it was just like, you sound British even though you're speaking in Bemba. But I was like, what? Like that was me thinking. And I was like, yeah, I got this. Like, hey. And then I started, and then he was like, oh dear, no. And people kind of picked up on that. They were like, oh, Inonge, because my name is very Zambian. Like I literally arrive at the airport and people start speaking to me in Lozi, which is our tribe. Like, oh no, oh boy, no, I'm like, oh gosh, I can't. There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
But even with that, they're like, oh, you're. People could pick up that I wasn't from there. So when I'm in Scotland,
Yeah.
people are like, where are you from? Because I have this twang, and like,
Yeah.
and then when I'm in Zambia, it used to be that that wasn't really a thing, but now when I go back, they're like, okay, you don't live. We know you're not from here, but you're sort
Yeah.
of from here. But there's, you know what I mean? So you don't. I
Yeah.
never belong here fully. Although it's like I love Scotland. It's like kind of home. But there's still a part of
Yeah.
me that longs for Zambia. But when I go back to Zambia, I'm not. Things have changed. Friendships have
Yeah.
changed. I've changed, and then I'm not
Yeah.
quite. I'm at home, but I'm not really. And
Mm.
it's kind of this crisis where I'm like, where do I belong? I don't belong anywhere. So, and I think a lot
Yeah.
of people might experience that, where they might want to go back to their roots or their culture, and that's something that they very much feel is part of them. But then when they do go back, they kind of feel that sense of, I don't quite fit in. So how do you think, how have you wrestled with that kind of identity crisis, of cultural identity crisis, as it were, and what position, what did you have to work through, and what got you to where you are now with your guts?
That's a good question. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I think one of the main things for me was fear of rejection. So one thing that closed me up towards the beginning is that because I didn't feel like I fit in, I was scared of being rejected. So that's something that I had to work through, just combating fear. But it was a long process, and I still deal with those kind of issues, but to a less extent whereby it doesn't paralyze me anymore. So the fear of rejection is something that I had to deal with, and I had to really wrestle within myself and ask myself, okay, well, why do I feel this? I can't remember what kind of therapy, but I think it's like cognitive behavior therapy. You can ask questions whereby you say, okay, so for instance, I'm bad at everything, for instance, or everybody hates me, for instance, they will never love me. Let's say that, so they'll never love me. That's a statement. Then is that true or is it false? And if it's true, then is there anything you can do about it? If not, how do you move forward? So asking myself those tough questions, is there evidence that nobody's going to accept me? And the answer was no. So then is there any evidence that I may be accepted? And there was. And what can I do? How can I now get the personal skills, the interactional skills to make friends? So that's kind of how I was dealing with it on this side of it, being in the UK. As in, well, there's no evidence that everybody I'm going to meet is going to hate and reject me. So let me deal with that. But then when it comes to being in Zambia, it's like, am I Zambian enough?
Yeah.
Anymore? Like, are you Zambian enough? Like, and to some extent, I was like, maybe not. But then one thing that was a game changer for me was becoming a Christian. Because I asked myself so many times, where do I belong? But when I became a Christian, I found my identity. I knew I belong with Christ. I belong with God. And if the earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, then I can literally belong anywhere I go. And I no longer think of myself as I have to belong somewhere, because I already belong. I know who I am, and I always thought my identity was in my culture or in my family line, my bloodline. But when I became a Christian, that settled things to me to actually start dealing with it. Like, actually, Waku, you belong. You are truly loved. You're truly seen and you're truly loved. You belong. And everything else you can now bring into that. So what culture do I have? I have a kingdom culture, God's culture. So that's kind of how I started dealing with things, as in, what culture does God tell me to have? And how does that fit in wherever I go? Whether I'm in the UK, whether I'm in Zambia or Australia or whatever, I have a culture that is a fusion of my earthly experience, yes, like where I come from. That's very much who I am in Zambia. And the experiences I've had in the UK, now having lived here most of my life, that has also shaped me, but God ultimately also shapes me. So I can merge the best of both worlds into who I am, because I'm a child of God. So that's mainly how I've persisted and dealt with those kind of issues. I do not know whether you have something different.
I only started having like identity crisis issues, I think, when I finished university.
Mm.
So that's when I realized, because when I went to university, everyone asked you this question, the basics. What's your name? What are you studying? And where are you from? And then I was thinking, oh, okay, my name is Easy. Well, what I study is easy, but even then I studied actuarial science. So even that was like a good 5-minute conversation.
Yeah.
And then they asked me where I'm from. I was like, it's complicated.
Yeah.
So then I'd explain, I'm technically from Zambia, but then I grew up in Cardiff and now I'm in Canterbury.
Yeah.
And then whatever you want to ask about that, we talk about it.
Mm.
And so when I came back to Cardiff, I was thinking to myself, now when people ask me where am I from?
Yeah.
Because I come back to Cardiff and growing up here, the memories in my childhood that I associate with the place, but is it home? And then I started really questioning what is home, because when I was in Canterbury, Cardiff was home, but I'm here in Cardiff, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. So what makes up home? Because then even when we moved to Cardiff, when people asked me what is home, I would say Zambia. And so I was thinking to myself, and I started wrestling with that question of where is home? Where do I really belong? And so then I had the same thing I'm teaching the youth, I was now needing to teach to myself. Because then I thought, okay, fine, I know my identity, but what does that mean with my place of belonging? And that's when I started really growing in my faith in this area to really realize that actually where your heart is really where your home is, like where your treasure is. And if my treasure is in Christ and Christ is my treasure, he is everywhere. And so for me, I was thinking, I don't need to associate home with a geographic location because God is with me everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm.
And so now living that truth is what helps me, I guess, with that question of thinking, where do I belong and where is my culture?
Mm-hmm.
That kingdom culture really answers the question for me, is thinking, okay, fine, this is my culture. So now what is kingdom culture? So yeah, so many questions come from that, but
Yeah, amen.
Summary.
I love that. Like actually just taking when your identity is in Christ, then wherever you go,
Yeah.
like bringing that kingdom culture, and that is what kind of shapes you. And I think
Yeah.
for me, kind of beyond kind of present hope, I kind of got to the point where I was like longing for home, as in a future home,
Yes,
which the
amen.
Christian worldview presents, that Revelation gives, where there will come a time where I will fully be like,
Yes.
this is home. I always kind of,
Yeah.
it's difficult to explain to people, like, oh, when I go to Zambia, I sort of feel at home because I get off the plane and I'm like, oh, I feel that heat, smell that dust, and I'm like, this is home. Like, but even those kind of mini, I guess, shades of when we feel at home in different places, we will experience that in all its full reality in the new creation. And I think having that future hope kind of helps to wrestle with the now, and like, okay, where am I gonna be? Where I'm gonna stay? Where do I really belong? So, but I kind of want to finish off on talking about practical realities of how you can. So we both mentioned having all of these cultures kind of shape us, and even though they're not our ultimate identity, as in the thing that ultimately defines us, they are things that God, who, it's no accident that we're born in Zambia and then moved wherever to live. That when you're Christian, nothing is an accident. And so how do we take those cultural things that have shaped us and kind of, I guess, celebrate them and use them for good? So for I guess for somebody like maybe us that grew up somewhere else like Zambia, or I'm thinking more of an African context, how do you continue to kind of engage with that culture? Because I guess that's the root, that's kind of where we come from, but it becomes increasingly harder to engage when you don't live there, when you're elsewhere, so in the diaspora. So what do you think, for you guys, what are some practical ways in which you continue to be proud of your culture, to celebrate it, to keep it going, as it were? What are some of the ways that you do that now, and how would you advise somebody that was like looking to do that? Maybe they moved even when they were so much younger and they're like, I know I'm Zambian, but I don't know what that might look like, or what my culture is like. What are some practical things that could get them started on that?
I think one thing is engaging in community events. So like I thank God for mom because of the nature of the way our mom is. We will always have some form of culture there somewhere. She's involved. She was in the committee for like the Zambians in Cardiff. And so she was involved with like arranging independence parties, Christmas get-togethers, New Year's parties, birthday parties. She was always there in the focal point. And because of that, she's there, we have to go. Automatically.
No option.
Yeah.
But it was great because there
so
were
much
other
fun.
young people as well around our age. So we got to actually grow up with them and engage with them and just fellowship. So that was great for us.
Yeah. So one good tip is to engage in your community. Whoever, even if there's no one, actually, it depends. Because some people know they're of African descent, but they may not know which country or not know where to start. But because my vantage point is knowing that I'm Zambian. So if you do know, like, I'm from Ghana, I'm from Nigeria, whichever country you're from, it's to try to see if there's a community that you can engage with. And then if there isn't, try to get something going. Which other people do you know from school, from uni, from whatever social context you have, and try to get them together and start something going.
Yes, and I think just to add on that, a lot of people, if you know at least the country where you're from, a lot of people can actually know connections.
Yeah.
Like our mom is amazing in that she can hear a name and associate it with a certain group of people or tribe or something. And I'm
I don't know how she knows it.
So
I can do that.
Yeah, you can.
Can you not pick up? Yeah, I pick up tribes from the name.
I can pick up countries, but tribes.
I can pick up names.
Unless it's Zambian, I struggle.
But with regard to like she knows people.
Yeah.
I probably know your auntie's whatever because we went to school together and she had a cousin who had that name. So you may be related to
happened before.
Like she'll find somebody's relative and they don't even have to be like Lozzie, they don't have to be from our tribe. She will find relatives based on your name and maybe you look like this person. And I'm thinking like, how do you know that the sound of someone's voice? She actually was telling me a story last night that happened like back in her 20s where she was back in like in Mongu. And
I wasn't here.
No, you were not there. And they were literally waiting for a bus with my dad and everything. And they heard the sound of someone's voice and they were like, that person's laughter sounds like this person. And it was. Like random encounters, like they heard the laugh and they're like, that sounds like I think it was dad's relative in the end. But just
that is skill.
The sound of good. So like if you have some information, even a name, and you're trying to find out where you're from, just try to find a community of people from that country. Some people know things, they know people, they can have connections. So that's some way you can do that.
Yeah. And another thing is so at those events, everyone was speaking in Bemba. And I know. And I remember saying to mom, like, you know what? When you're in Lusaka, like the main language everyone speaks is Nyanja. And then why is every single Zambian abroad that I've met able to speak Bemba? It just seems like an expected thing everyone knows. So we were at these parties and like aunties and uncles would be trying to talk to me and Wako and like our brother as well. And then we noticed that like they would be speaking to us in Bemba. And then if we can't respond, or I don't understand Bemba, not a lick. And so not being able to respond makes it look like we're not in touch with our roots. So I automatically started making the assumption of language and roots. So we came back home and I asked mom, like, Mom, can you teach me this language? Because everyone seems to speak it. And then mom was like, no. You're not going to start speaking any other Zambian language if you do not.
You are Lozzie.
Exactly.
Lozzie is also, man. We are proud of the language.
And so that took me on the trajectory of actually actively trying to learn my mother tongue properly. And then when I went to university, I thought, how can I now continue with this momentum without my mom there speaking to me? So I asked her, like, every time we're on the phone, can you only speak to me in our mother tongue? And then when I wasn't speaking to her, instead of reading my Bible in English, I would go on the Bible app and go in the Lozzie version and read that. And to be able to help me with my vocabulary, I listened to another Bible app which has the audio at the same time. So that's how I kind of kept that going. Because one important thing for me is community. And if I'm able to talk to my grandparents, my elders. One thing that broke my heart was like 16 years ago? When was it? It's about 16 years ago.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to speak our mother tongue at all. I lost it completely. I was learning Welsh and English. That wasn't really the languages I could speak. And I couldn't communicate with my grandparents. And I was thinking to myself, I can't live like this. And so to be able to be a part of the community is something that's important to me. So one important thing is to communicate with that community. And so learning our mother tongue is something that was important for me to help keep my culture alive. What tips do you think?
Yeah, I think language, yes. And just finding out, for me, finding out about my family line, just who people were, because I'm named after my great-grandmother. So asking questions, I think, is something. Intrigue, being interested, and just asking people. If you have the luxury of people who can inform you about, you know, your family, you know, my mom talks about her grandmother, my great-grandmother quite a lot. So just finding out stories, what people were like, and also asking questions like with different life events. What happens at a wedding, at a funeral? We had a bridal shower last year, you know, we were there.
That's how we got
reunited at the kitchen party. So like asking like, okay, so why do we do this? And you know, like, how can I maybe now incorporate, you know, those kind of things into my everyday life? So for instance, like at funerals, you wear the chitenge. Like as women, you wear chitenge. Like I do not know why, but that's something that you pick up on and you know that you should do. So it can also be culturally acceptable. If you go to Zambia and you have to attend an event, you know what to expect as well. So you can easily blend in and they can know that you understand the basics. You know, so if you do not know some of the basics, some people may think like, okay, they're not interested in engaging with the culture. So find out the basics, find out about your family, ask questions. I pretty much did similar things to what Mocha had highlighted with regard to like asking mom to teach us and reading the Bible in Lozi. Trying as much to push myself and asking my grandmother, you know, to speak to me, and like she would laugh at my broken Lozi, and mine has deteriorated over the years, especially when I moved to Scotland for 4 years, and I was trying to actively speak to family over the phone in Lozi, but I can feel it now, it's deteriorated, but just trying to and continue pressing on, I think has definitely helped me. So
I think that's
questions.
Yeah, I think you're asking questions and the intentionality is such a big thing. So I have learned so much just by being curious and being like, why do we do that? Even like you mentioned going to events, kitchen parties, I wasn't really into them. I was just like, ugh. But then once I started asking questions about what's going on, it became less boring for me to be at them because I was like, knew the songs, I knew what the songs meant, because I was constantly asking my mom, why do they do that? Why do they do that dance? Why are they bringing pots? Why are they bring, you know, like all of these questions, and then you understand what's going on. Even when if you do have the opportunity to be able to go back, you can ask questions about there's things I've always done as a child that I just did. Like, you know, you're in a room with people, apparently I don't know where this comes from, if it's a Lozi thing or it's just a Zambian thing. If you're the youngest in the room and somebody says you're thirsty, you just stand up and you go get a glass of water. Like they didn't even say, can you, like, and it doesn't matter. This was last year. I'm 29 years old. I'm like, surely not. Like, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not gonna read minds that you say you're thirsty, but I was the youngest in the room and they all looked, I'm a visitor, I'm 29 years old, I have to go stand up and go get your water because you said you're thirsty. Like, that's just, I'm just like, but why? But you know, there's things that you maybe did when you grew up that you completely forget, because I forgot that was a thing because I must have just done it automatically. And the chitenge thing, like even people hand you a chitenge when you walk into a house if there's males sometimes and you're wearing jeans. Like if you don't know that, you'd be like so offended, like how dare you, like who do, like, you know, I'm a feminist, like no, just put it on. Like it's fine. So like being curious, like why do we do this, like, you know, you understand, you might not agree with absolutely everything, but that's fine. Understanding is helpful. The language thing, I'm the opposite of you guys. You guys can speak Lozi, I can't. I used to be able to speak it when I was in Zambia, because kind of like you, my grandma would come and she could only speak in Lozi. So I learned how to pick it up a little bit, and I've just completely, not completely lost it. I can pick up sort of words and what people are saying. I can say how are you. I can hold a basic conversation. But
Yeah.
yeah, I remember trying to, when I went back last time and they were trying to ask me when I was studying what I was studying, and I was like, no, what I did, like, what do you do? And I couldn't construct. I was like, I know half words. I couldn't construct in my head. I'm like, Nizikwa University law. That's just I'm just used to, like, for most of a sentence, English words. And I was just like, this is so bad. I didn't realize how bad it got until that I couldn't. So I started what you had suggested. It was like, Mom, let's have Lozy Tuesdays. But I think that lasted 3 weeks. I was like, I'm tired.
What?
This is hard work, but I need to go back to like Lozy Tuesdays or something like that because it's terrible.
It works.
Even my Bemba apparently sounds British.
Yeah. That's what
To do on the next video in Lozy, like
in Lozy. Oh yeah.
That'll be tough. That'll be tough. But the thing is, I don't realize how much I know. Yeah. Because remember, like last week, we actually had a Zoom call with like my mom's side of the family. So like we had like not even too many people. I mean, about 10 people, like uncles and cousins and aunties as well. And then I was so basically when Uncle and I, Lozy, not many people speak it.
Yeah.
But then I'm so used to being the minority where like we can go anywhere and no one will understand us if we're speaking
our secret language.
Yeah. So that's the problem, is that I'm used, if I'm trying to be discreet, I'm used to defaulting to speaking in Lozy.
Yeah.
It's
dangerous.
So yes, but I realized last year when we were in Zambia, I was there at the market, and they said, I said to Wako like, oh, that's expensive. And then the guy heard me, he was like, no, we got cheaper ones. And I thought to myself, oh dear. I'm in Zambia. And even last week, I was there trying to discreetly speak to Wako in our family conversation.
I know.
Obviously, we all speak the same language. I don't know what I was thinking.
And I was there like, thinking, are you gonna out me on camera? Like,
and I was like, oh, sorry, Wako. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Anyway, you don't need to know what the situation was. But like...
No, that is honestly, there's so much to explore. Is there anything else that that comes to mind just about this whole idea of being in diaspora, culture, identity, practical things? Anything else come to mind that you guys want to add before we finish off?
Also, curiosity about other cultures helps.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not interested in yours, or like, you know, you just kind of demotivated. I think finding out about other people's cultures, if you have other people around you.
And you see there's so much overlap.
Yeah, you just see overlap. And I think sometimes like part of like taking it back to where we started from with regard to identity, I think finding out that although we're different, we're actually very similar as people, that can actually help you in finding your identity. You know what I mean? So sometimes we look at differences and think like people are so different from us, or my culture is too different. But if you actually dig into other cultures, you find actually we're not so different. You know, as a human race, there's something that kind of unites us as people. And being curious about life and other people also helps with finding out who you are as well as a person. So that's just one thing I would add. So no matter where you are, because not everyone is in the UK, I'm guessing. So like you could be anywhere else in the world. Just learn more about that culture, but you find out more about who you are as well, and maybe where you actually fit into that culture, and dig deeper into yours, and you find a balance eventually.
Amen. Oh, thank you so much. We'll carry on talking because there's so much more to say, but I think I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for joining me in Overflow Chat. And if you've got any other tips or anything else that you've thought of that we've not maybe explored in the video, please let me know in the comments, and we can get this conversation going. Thank you for watching. Bye.